holy shrine of Imam Hussain in Karbala, and they do traditional walking, which relate to the history of how people have been doing this walk as a pilgrimage walk for years since the demise of the martyrdom of Imam Hussain. The tradition goes back to that his son, Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam Sajjad, took the caravan, and he was released from the prison to go to the tombs, to the bodies of Imam Hussain, who was being scattered in the plains of Karbala, to bury him. And so there's a tradition of this walking which lasts 1,400 years. So it's a miracle that how this tradition continued to be part of the mankind, so the part of the humanity, and the humanity has learned a lot. The man who stood for truth, the man who stood for justice, the man who stood for injustice, and how do I say, the tyrant of the time, Yazid bin Muawiyah, and the book is here. You can actually Google his name and you'll find so much of the history of Islam. So there are two sides of the history of Islam. After the demise of Imam Hussain, after the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, and previous and prior to Imam Hussain, although the tradition is and the troubles of the history of Islam, the body of Islam started during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that continued up to the point whereby the grand sacrifice took place. And annually this grand sacrifice is commemorated worldwide. On the streets, the procession go out. We also do it here in Dublin, London, New York, Toronto. The tradition goes all over the world. Thousands of people come out on the streets and basically protest that injustice that happened and offer their solidarity for those who believe in peaceful existence in Islam. Obviously, the body of Islam has been hijacked many times in the centuries. In recent times in our lives, it's been hijacked by so-called Muslims and indeed hurted humanity in a big way. So that has a relevance here when you actually come to Imam Hussain, that his mission was a peaceful mission, his cause was a peaceful cause, and he stood for that, and for that he was cut down mercilessly, not alone, but with his children, with his family, his companions. All of them have sacrificed themselves. So we commemorate that, and we throw light on the rationale behind that why did he do that? He had a choice. If he wanted, he could have walked away from that problem, but he faced the hard side of the truth. And for that, he paid a significant price. And because of that, the humanity recognized, nations recognized all over the world that what and how he was. So I'm not taking too much of time. You know, if you have studied a little bit about Imam Hussain, you would know what it's all about. I am grateful to our own center here, Dr. Ali Al-Saleh, the Imam of this place, is generously conduct for 2 months the entire program. We have commemorated traditionally Muharram every day, the beginning of the calendar month of Islamic calendar. So the community gather together, they recite a story, they passionately outcry, they passionately pour their heart out to the tragedy, which is a gruesome tragedy. If you look at the pictures, if you look at the movies, if you look at the YouTube clips, it was the gruesome tragedy that took place on the plains of Karbala 1,400 years ago. So we passionately remember that and we commemorate. So it is the tradition of the post-commemoration or post-Karbala event that his sister Zainab, who was taken as a prisoner of war with children, that she continued that, and that tradition survived today. So it is the gift of the sister of Imam Hussain who continued this tradition of commemoration. So we refrain from a normal, the conference is about talking about the various aspects of that. And I've been very lucky to have the youth every year who are born and brought up here in this country, and they're learning and continuing to the fact that that's their history. So we do have a few guests. who will be shedding their light. We have an old friend. Conor Lenihan is my old personal friend who's been always available whenever I request him to appear. We have Darren Coventry, who is an old associate of this place, and he always repeats me every time it's my mosque. And so he's going to talk about it from the sanctuary project that he's running within the Garda Síochána. And then we have Adrian Christia, who is on his way from the Dublin City Interfaith Forum. We also have Michael Corbett, and we have finally Dr. Ali, vote of thanks and final speakers. So without taking too much of time, I'll be intervening bits and pieces in between. May I request our first speaker, the lady speaker, Fatima, to come forward and deliver her paper. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is a salutation we receive.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Praise be to Allah who allowed none to witness when He created the heavens and the earth, and who took no helper when He authored the spirits. He has no associate in divinity and no support in unity. Tongues fall silent before the limit of describing Him. Intellects fail before the core of knowing Him. Tyrants fall low in awe of Him. Faces are humbled in fear of Him. And everything mighty yields to His mightiness. And may His blessings be upon His messenger, Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And His salutations be upon him everlastingly, eternally. Assalamu alaikum, dear respected brothers and sisters. Today, we have all gathered here to remember a remarkable event in the history of mankind. A tragedy in which the grandson of the Holy Prophet of Islam was brutally martyred along with his family and friends. Karbala is often mistaken as a tradition that Shias commemorate every year. But it is so much more than that. Karbala is a robust wake-up call for us all to open our eyes to the harsh realities of our modern-day world. We are surrounded and encapsulated within the brutal forces of modern Yazids. The world is in the hands of the rich and the tyrants, while the rest of the world continues to suffer at the hands of these oppressors. In order to fully understand the significance of Karbala in our daily lives, we need to grasp and dissect the true essence of Imam Hussein's revolution that took place over 1400 years ago. Why was it that Imam Hussain alayhi salam left the comfort of his home along with his family and friends and sacrificed his life in the hot, scorching desert of Karbala? Imam Hussain alayhi salam made a stand for moral justice. It was his strong moral and ethical values that compelled him to refuse allegiance to a man like Yazid and stand up against his tyrannical rule. Imam Hussein's sacrifice was a catalyst for revolutionary change and led to the collapse of Yazid's kingdom. Imam Hussain alayhi salam sacrificed his life for the freedom of humanity, and throughout his lifetime encouraged us to have freedom of thought. He is reported to have said that if you do not believe in any religion and do not fear the hereafter, then at least be free in your present life. This was the essence and core of Imam Hussein's sacrifice, to jolt us to the reality of the world and have the freedom of our own thoughts. Once we understand the reality of Imam Hussein's revolution, we can apply the same blueprint to our lives. Let's open our eyes to the grim reality of our world. We are lucky to be living in the comfort of our homes, while our brothers and sisters in many parts of the world are suffering at the hands of the cruelest tyrants. Our Palestinian brothers and sisters were evicted from their own homes by the cruel and harsh Israeli forces. Our sisters in France are openly oppressed from wearing the hijab. And our brothers and sisters are starved to death in Yemen as the rest of the world turns a blind eye to these issues. These are the core moral and ethical issues that need to be resolved in our world. We need to gain inspiration from the heartbreaking tragedy of Karbala and work together in unity to solve the issues of the world. Like I said at the start of my speech, Karbala is often seen as a tradition that only pertains to Shias. But in reality, the event of Karbala is an inspiration to all the believers of the world. This cleavage that has occurred in the body of Islam, giving birth to Shia and Sunni Muslim ideology and subsects, subsequently needs to transform into a strong and unbreakable brotherhood that comes together to fight the injustices of this world. The tragedy of Karbala should be a source of inspiration for Muslims all around the world to come together and stand up for moral justice, just as Imam Hussain alayhi salam did. Imam Hussain alayhi salam's legacy is timeless, and he has taught us to stand by our principles till the very end. I would like to end my speech with a jolting quote of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, in which he states, "Those who are silent when others are oppressed are guilty of oppression themselves." This is a reminder that we all need to come together and raise our voices against the oppressors of today's world through any means possible. In the form of poetry, artwork, articles, speeches, we need to use today's greatest weapon, social media, and make a stand against the injustices of today. Thank you so much for listening. Labbaik ya Hussain.
Thank you so much, Maha Fatima, for wonderful, passionate words that you have put together. The world situation you encapsulated in few words. Of course, this is the dilemma for mankind. As long as the world will exist, these things will exist, and therefore on the other side, the voices of Hussein will also be rising to protest and to make points. I acknowledge the presence of the Iranian ambassador, Mr. Islami, Dr. Islami, here as well. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for coming along. May I now request Afad Jafari to say a few words as a local youth from Dublin. Afad Jafari.
I seek refuge in God from the accursed Satan. And I begin in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the especially merciful, the one who has created everything in utmost perfection. And may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon his pure and beloved messenger, the peak of creation, the symbol of humanity, the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, and his immaculate and purified household and progeny of the Ahlul Bayt, peace be upon them. And a special peace be upon the leader of our time, the awaited savior of humanity, Al-Imam al-Mahdi, ajlallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, respected brothers, sisters, and dear listeners. In my short speech, time is very limited. I'm going to talk about 3 seemingly individual points, tie them together, and then deliver one final point on the human being. So I request that you follow me, follow the words I'm saying, and try to keep up with the points that I will be making. Allah says in his most glorified and protected book, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَقَالُوا لَوْ كُنَّا نَسْمَعُ أَوْ نَعْقِلُ مَا كُنَّا فِي أَصْحَابِ السَّعِيرِ. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And they, the inhabitants of the fire, will say, had we but listened or used our intellect, we would have not been amongst the dwellers of the blazing fire. To explain this verse, God is putting holy revelation, revelation by the prophets, revelation by those protecting the message of the prophet, beside the intellect. Now I'd like to ask you guys, how many of us have the intellect? I think it's all of us, I hope. We all have access, we all have the ability to use our intellects, and Allah is putting this intellect beside divine revelation. So intellect is something that is given to all men. And Allah is testifying within the Quran that the Quran, Islam itself, is based on intellect. It is founded on the intellect. That was the first point. The importance of intellect and how intellect is connected, is based on this religion. How this religion is based on intellect. The second point, the second small, brief point that I'm going to talk about is the man we are gathered here today to remember, Imam al-Hussain. As you know, Imam al-Hussain was the son of Imam Ali, the cousin of the Prophet. He was the son of Lady Fatima, and he was the grandson of the Prophet of Islam. The love between these four individuals was out of words, so much so that the Prophet said that Hussain is from me, which makes sense, he's his grandson. But then he says something so very strange. He says, and I am from Hussain. This level of love that the Prophet had for his grandson was beyond the words that I can use. And only 60 years after the Prophet, now Imam Hussain is beheaded in the plains of a desert by Muslims. So my first point was the intellect. My second point was Imam Hussain and who he is. And my third point is paradise. Our ranking, our reward. It's something that all faiths share in common, some sort of divine or beyond this world reward that those who do good are rewarded for, are rewarded by. In Islam, God created the human being for paradise. We are not created for hell, which means that it is very easy to enter paradise. A scholar once said that a man, this is a narration, a man was being dragged to hell, and God called him before he was going to hell, and so the man looked back because his body was chained, ready for hell. The only thing he could move was his head. He turned back and looked towards the direction of his Lord. His Lord asked, who is your Lord? He said, I seek forgiveness. I was wrong. You are my Lord. And that man was taken to paradise. So paradise is something that is not only for the Muslims, but it's a gift, a promise for the human being. If God wills, we will all enter paradise. God says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, verily those who believe and do righteous deeds, for them is gardens of paradise for their entertainment. And God continues on saying, wherein they will have whatever they desire. But the word that God uses in these verses is Jannah, Jannatu. Now, those who speak Arabic or study Quranic Arabic know that this is referring to a Jannah. Right? And that was my third point. The first was the intellect. The second was Imam Hussain. And the third was paradise. Now, to tie my 3 points before I deliver one final point. This path has an intellectual basis. The Quran itself testifies that this path has an intellectual basis. Now, what else does the Quran say? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in Surah Najm, verse 3 to 4. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنَّا هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٍ يُوحَىٰ. The Prophet, my selected servant, does not speak except revelation. He does not speak out of his lowly desires. Meaning the Prophet, the selected servants of God, have erased themselves and left nothing but God, have left nothing but the words of God behind. And so, we reach this very common understanding in the Shia school of thought that the Prophet is the Quran itself, because nothing remains of the Prophet of his own desires, only what God wills. So now we have reached this almost logical pathway that the Prophet is the Quran manifested, and the Quran itself is intellectually based. Now, words of that Prophet, أولنا محمد وآخرنا محمد وأوسطنا محمد وكلنا محمد. I am Muhammad, and the first of my progeny is Muhammad, Imam Ali, and the last of my progeny is Muhammad, Imam al-Mahdi, our awaited savior. In the middle is Muhammad, and we are all Muhammad, meaning the light that we share, the ideology that we share, the degree of submission to God that we share is all one. And so now we see that we first intellectually realize that the Quran is based on intellect, and that the Prophet is that Quran manifested, and the Prophet, from him, his Hussain, is that Prophet that is intellectually based. So if you intellectually accept the Quran, you must accept Hussain. You see my tie? And now what is it about this Hussain that once we have realized, once we have accepted intellectually that this man has been honored by God, in what way? It means the path that he walks on has been honored. And honored how? Like I said, in the Quran, God refers to Jannah as a particular, a general Jannah. But then there is one verse in the Quran where God changes the word that he uses. He changes the familiarity that he uses with Jannah. And he says in Surah Fajr, verse 27 to 30, Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah, fadkhuli fi ibadi, wadkhuli jannati. Allah, what does this mean? O you soul that has reached serenity, come back to your Lord that is well pleased with you. So enter among my servants and enter my Jannah. That Quran that we intellectually accepted and realized that the Prophet is nothing but the Quran, whose grandson is that Prophet, God gives him a different reward, a special reward for walking on the path that God designated, and that is God's Jannah. There is a different level here that God is painting. He's explaining to all of mankind that there is a different level for those. Yes, for heaven, Jannah is for everybody, but for those who give themselves to me, they enter my Jannah. And so to just summarize what I was saying and to deliver my final point on the human being itself, we realized that intellectual, logical pathway leading up to the importance, the level of Imam Hussain. And those that walk the path of Imam Hussain receive a special personal reward from God. And so my final point to the people, to the speakers, to myself foremost, is that Imam Hussein's purpose was to show us that path, that which you walk upon elevates you and makes you worthy of deserving God's Jannah. And the biggest regret of the human being will be when the day comes that he is raised before his Lord, that he will see. Before I make this point, when a dog is raised on the day of judgment, he will be raised as a dog. When any animal is raised on the day of judgment, they will be raised as that animal. There is no humiliation in this because that is their reality. But the human being is different. His reality is in his own hands. And that is the regret of the human being, that when he sees his Lord has put all creation in rows, He will look to his side and see the reality of what he could have achieved, but he wasted his life. He was deluded in his life, and he wasted all his potential in not reaching what he could have. And Imam Hussain was that light. Imam Hussain was that rude awakening for the entire universe. That this is the path that will help you reach your greatest potential. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Thank you for listening. اللهم صل على
Thank you so much, Afad, for this dilemma of God versus person and human versus God, and the struggle that mankind does that throughout his life. And this is the greatest challenge and greatest dilemma, to understand the existence of, while you are alive, about the God and his attributes. Hussainu minni wa ana min al-Hussain is the Arabic phrase of I am from Hussain and Hussain is from me. That's beautifully explained by him, that how people come to Rasulullah, to Prophet Muhammad, and to God through Hussain. And this is the journey that we believe very strongly, that many people go astray in their lives, but when they come to Hussain, they come quite closely to God eventually. May I now request Mr. Amir Khan, who's a pharmacist, a local pharmacist, locally qualified. He's going to talk about the family of Prophet Muhammad who sacrificed themselves, and particularly the two sons of Imam Hussein's sister, Zainab Salamullah alayhi.
Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad and his holy progeny. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ajal farajahum. In the name of Allah, who is the most beneficent and merciful, I'd like to start this short story about Muhammad with a verse from the Holy Quran. Qala rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. O my Lord, open for me my chest, grant me self-confidence, contentment, and boldness. Ease my task from me and remove the impediment from my speech, so they may understand what I say. We surely live in a world where we have books, articles, lectures, YouTube videos, and a plethora of resources about everything. On this occasion, I'm gonna talk about a few young personalities in the history of mankind and Islam, and Muhammad. Those personalities are tremendously young and is still an inspiration from millions and billions globally, especially for the younger generations, including myself. Anyway, we all still have a long way to go. Since we have limited time, I will keep it quite brief. Let's get started with a swift introduction about Muhammad. So let's get started with who were and Muhammad. And Muhammad were the sons of Abdullah ibn Jafar and Lady Zainab. Lady Zainab is the granddaughter of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his holy progeny. They had not accompanied Lady Zainab when she left Medina with Imam Hussain. Just before Imam Hussain started his journey from Makkah, Hazrat Abdullah ibn Jafar brought his two sons to Makkah and handed them over to Imam Hussain, said, O Imam, since you have decided to go and will not allow me to come with you, please take my two sons with you. And On will represent his maternal grandfather, Hazrat Ali, and Muhammad will represent his paternal grandfather, Hazrat Jafar-e Tayyar. Since his maternal grandfather, Hazrat Ali, and Muhammad, I have brought for you our two sons to go with you. In the time of difficulty, on our master Hussain, I give one son as a sadaqah. A sadaqah is a gift in Islam from my side, and other one as a sadaqah from your side. And Muhammad were quite young. It is reported that was just about 13 years, and Muhammad was a year or two younger. They had learned the art of fencing from their uncle Hazrat Abbas. So what actually happened on the eve of 10th Muharram, a day of sadness when Imam Hussain and his holy family sacrificed everything to save humanity and to save Islam. On the night before Ashura, Lady Zainab said to them, my sons, tomorrow there will be a battle. I cannot ask you to fight because you are way too young, but if anything happens to Imam Hussain, my brother, while you are still alive, I will be filled with shame. Both the boys stood up and said, Mother, we have the blood of Ali and Jafar. Our grandfathers are warriors whose fame will always be remembered. Do you think we can possibly shame them? Moreover, we are the scholars of Hazrat Abbas. Do you even think we can possibly shame them? Mother, unless you forbid us and stop us from fighting, we shall go to the battlefield and show the enemies of Islam, enemies of humanity, how bravely children of Islam can fight. All we want from you is a promise that you will never be for us. Our souls will never rest in peace if you grieve for us after we are gone. Tears of joy and pride followed down Lady Zainab's eyes as she embraced her two boys. What happened in the battlefield? In the morning, during the general attacks from the enemy, On and Muhammad fought side by side with Ali Akbar, Qasim, and Hazrat Abbas. Every time either of them succeeded in felling our enemy, he would look proudly at Hazrat Abbas, who would smile and nod his approval. Imam Hussain would not give the two boys permission to go for a single combat. They were very disappointed. They came to their mother for help. Bibi Zainab sent someone to request Imam Hussain to come to her tent. When Imam came, Bibi Zainab said, Hussain, at the time of Siffin, Abbas was only 8 years old. When he saw someone trying to attack you, he rushed into the battlefield and killed the man. Do you remember how proud our father Ali was? Today, I want to be proud of my sons as well. I won't see them go out there and defend Islam, defend humanity. Will you not allow me that privilege? Imam Hussain just stood up there in silence. He looked at his sister. He saw the disappointment on her face. He saw tears forming around her eyes. He put his arms around the two boys and led them to their horses. He kissed them and then helped them mount. Go, said Imam, go and show the world how those as young as you can fight the injustice and oppression of a Yazid. Then he turned round and lifted the curtain of the tent. The two boys rode out into the battlefield. They fought bravely. At one point, the enemy side, Umar ibn Saad, asked, Who are these two youngsters? They fight like I have seen Ali ibn Abi Talib fight. When he was told who they were, he ordered his soldiers to give up a single combat and surround and kill the boys. Just envisage the age of Honor Muhammad that time. On and Muhammad were attacked from all sides. Soon they were overpowered and brutally killed. Imam Hussain and Hazrat Abbas carried the two young dead bodies to a tent and laid them on the floor. Imam walked to Bibi Zainab's tent. He found her in prostrate after this. He found her in sujood, praying, O Allah, I thank you for accepting my sacrifice. My heart is filled with pride because my two sons have given their lives for their religion. To conclude, these great personalities are definitely a beacon of guidance and ark of salvation. To be very honest, it doesn't matter what age you are, what strata of the society you belong to, what gender you are, it's never to take a stand against any sort of crime, injustice, terrorism, oppression, or any wrongdoing. Salawat Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you very much, Amir, for shedding the light on these two young men who fought very bravely during the battle time. It was not Hussein alone. He sacrificed, as I said, unjust battle, which was imposed upon him. He was trapped on this treacherous path that they led him on. They invited him, in fact, with thousands of letters that come over and discuss the power and all that, and which was a treacherous plot. And so therefore he took the family, he took the children, 6-month-old baby, nephews like Honor Muhammad and all his brothers and sisters, and of course the ladies and women. Nobody goes to battle with the family. If you logically think about it, a battle is another strategically important action. You know, you prepare, you plan, everything you do, but you don't take your children and your family. So it was unjust, imposed, brutal suppression of the family of Prophet. Now, I'd like to request, we're moving towards the main speakers, and we are under pressure with time, particularly I'm grateful to Darren Coventry, who runs within the Garda Síochána, a project called the Safe Haven, and he'll talk about that, and he's a regular speaker, annual speaker of this conference, Mr. Darren Coventry. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. I suppose first and foremost, just to sort of, for a little bit of clarity, it's an independent sort of hate crime project that is run by Dublin City Interfaith Forum. I'm wearing a different cap today, but it's an absolute pleasure, and as always, it's fantastic to be asked to come here and to be able to sort of to speak and to be back in my mosque. All I can say is I'm very, very grateful, Dr. Ali, to Siraj, and to the Al-Bayt community, both present and those who've since passed, for the great hospitality and the sense of family when you walk in to Al-Bayt. It's quite a unusual and distinctive sort of feeling when you walk in and you're greeted. I can remember the first time walking in and uttering the words Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I remember the first time I've been able to sort of actually be taught how to do wudu and salah, to be able to stand side by side with people, to be able to sort of place my head against the stone that actually is from Karbala. And in a lot of ways to sort of, I suppose, bear witness to the idea of, a shared humanity and a shared sense that we're all brothers and sisters in faith, whatever that faith may be. So it might seem very strange for somebody who's a Buddhist married to a Hindu, coming into sort of the mosque and sort of embracing, all that is. But I'm also very, very grateful for the fact that I also have been able to continue on working within the area of diversity because of the good graces and the patience of Minister Adrian Christia, who has continued the efforts of looking at supporting interfaith as a means of being able to sort of look past the differences and be able to look at solidarity and unity and look at how can we actually address a lot of the sort of the injustices and the issues that faith communities in Ireland face. To that, I wanted to sort of actually talk about a quotation that I had come across from Bihar al-Anwar, who actually quotes from Imam Hussain, and he says, God will help the person who cares about other people's needs, both in this world and the hereafter. And I suppose in many ways that sort of concept of actually looking to the hereafter, looking for that sort of the reward for making the effort and the sacrifices, and the one that ultimately was made by Imam Hussain himself when he actually had his life taken from him. So what has that got to do with Safe Haven? Safe Haven was created out of many conversations, and when I had sort of moved on in my own career, and I can see, the mantle has been well and truly taken up by Superintendent sort of Michael Corbett, Sergeant Ger and Sergeant Dermot. It's great to see that sort of that aspect from the organisational perspective is well and truly in hand. But it doesn't mean it stops there. I suppose joining the An Garda Síochána and actually sort of coming in from a different faith community came with its own challenges, and it was something that I had always determined to sort of stay with. You can't just switch that off. And in a lot of ways, by working outside of the organisation, I felt that there was ways to be able to support as well communities and whatnot. So that's where the independent sort of Safe Haven project came about through Dublin City Interfaith Forum. So what exactly is it? Well, it was funded by the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. It's actually a hate-motivated incident response project that's actually supported by Dublin City Interfaith Forum. And it actually uses existing online reporting mechanisms. And again, it's also looking at faith-based responses to those experiencing hate-motivated incidents or that have been subjected to expressions of hate and hostility as a manifestation of extremism or radicalization. So in a lot of ways, it comes back full circle, and it make you realize that we all have an obligation to stand together as brothers and sisters of faith in a very secular society, where the idea of actually looking towards faith communities, often they're seen as being anachronistic, or they're not actually sort of keeping up with the secular agenda. in a lot of ways, people feel they're justified by attacking those who actually have faith, irrespective of what that faith may be. We already contend and deal with the idea of, sectarianism. We already deal, and I shouldn't have to say this because I stand here, and you've experienced sectarianism in a way historically that many other traditions have not. Luckily, in Ireland, we can at least identify because of our own sort of experiences in relation to this. So I ask you, in relation to sacrifice, that was the thing that often sort of comes to mind when you think about injustice, sacrifice, oppression. These are all the sort of manifestations we see occurring within society today. And the one thing I would say is, what gives us hope? And what gives us hope is that concept of unity. When we strip past those differences and we look at what actually uniquely sort of identifies us together, and that's our humanity. And I suppose when reaching out and looking at our faith, what I would sort of ask you to do is to consider, become an advocate. Look at supporting your brothers and sisters of different traditions and faiths. Look past the door of the masjid. Look past the door of the community that's here. And show and demonstrate that aspect of compassion in practice. To demonstrate the attributes that are clearly seen when somebody is invited in through the door. Bring that outside. Become an advocate, support. Because in a lot of ways, what we would say is that when you actually train up within Safe Haven, you're still sort of representing traditions, but you're looking at things from an interfaith perspective. What you're looking to do is trying to reach out towards state agencies and actually be able to refer on. Because remember, it's only one piece of the puzzle. The guards alone can't fix societal sort of issues. The HSE can't fix a lot of those sort of issues. When you bring together civil society, communities, state agencies and all the rest, then you have at least a chance. That sense of unity comes into being. And what we're sort of asking, I suppose, is for you to step into that sort of space. Because when it comes down to sacrifice, there's very little sacrifice required of somebody to be able to learn how to recognise hate speech, to recognise the impact of that, to recognise what radicalisation and violent extremism is and how it's impacting other communities. In other words, looking at those injustices that are being done onto others as well as yourselves. To look at how do you actually report, whether it's through the statutory sort of reporting mechanisms that are available, whether it's through the non-statutory mechanisms, through INAR or iReport, and whether it's actually sort of reporting discrimination through the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, and then the other intergovernmental agencies that are available to be able to provide those supports. But fundamentally, when it comes to support, I suppose the key thing to bear in mind is look at supporting the likes of Dublin City Interfaith Forum in relation to its interfaith activities. Look at supporting the likes of victims who are actually experiencing discrimination, those who are experiencing sort of hatred, hostility, discrimination. But then also looking at how do we restore? That's the key thing. How do we restore the harm? When we focus so much on actually the wrong, how do we make it right? And in a lot of ways, that's where the focus for ourselves comes about, where we look at the restorative aspects of the practice and look at actually, okay, how do we actually build coalitions? How do we build that unity that actually allows for faith communities in Ireland to be able to develop, to progress, and to flourish? Because that is actually the beauty of actually being within this country, that you can be different, that you can actually sort of share different values, different standards, and come together and realise that, fundamentally, we're human beings. We're given the opportunity to be able to sort of experience life to its fullest. And we all have a collective obligation and a duty to be able to support and stand for those who actually can't stand for themselves. And what I would ask you to bear in mind is to come back to those words of Imam Hussain, when he actually talks about, God willing to help the person who cares about other people's needs, both in this world and the hereafter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren. Very, very, very powerful words. One thing coming to my mind, humanity, unity, is something that the father of Imam Hussain, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, has said in his book called Nahj al-Balagha. He said the human being either is your brother in faith or in humanity. And this is the biggest statement one could make, that every human being is related to each other. Either you are identified yourself as a people of the book, say for instance the tradition of Islam, which says, talk about the Abrahamic faith, which we have established here as well many years ago, 20 years ago almost, the Three Faith Forum of Ireland. The tradition coming from unity of God, and people are united as an interfaith, or you are in humanity. And that is the bottom line, and that is the biggest message. And if that works together, there will be no hate, there will be no tension, there will be no problems as such. Somebody asked another person recently, they were talking about it on the radio on RT Radio 1, saying that we do not like this fact of compartmentalizing humanity in Ireland during the COVID time. This sector, that sector, that sector, and there was a preferential differences between the different sector. Restaurant sector, that he said, no, humanity is one sector, and it should be. But for the practical point of view, obviously, the system has to be developed and things like that. But that is what the rub is. That's where the problem can be solved if humanity would start respecting other humanity, despite the fact that they belong to a different faith, different race, different color, different beliefs. And within Islamic bodies, we do have these two schools, the main schools of thoughts. And our duty is to highlight the unity aspect of that. And that is the theme this year for the conference. May I now request Conor Lenihan, who is also under time pressure, to say a few words, my old friend, ex-Minister of Integration and the member of Fianna Fáil. Come from the Fianna Fáil family, you all know who Conor is.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. It's a great pleasure after all the years of contact and presence in the Dáil to be back again amongst the Muslim community here in Dublin. I'm not looking for votes now. I'm not looking for credit of any kind. I'm actually here to, I suppose, acknowledge the role of Islam in Ireland, the wonderful role of Islam in Ireland, and of course to acknowledge the wonderful presence of the Ambassador of Iran, a country which I would dearly love to visit at some stage. Maybe the Ambassador will take note of that and issue an invitation soon. I think the culture and influence of Islam is extraordinary and must be understood better. I congratulate and particularly struck by the work done by the Aga Khan, for instance, in trying to bridge that gulf of understanding that can exist between, we call it the Judeo-Christian world, and that of Islam. And I welcome any opportunity to speak and talk about this on that particular theme. I think it's great to have the Garda Síochána here. They have a great, difficult job to do, and it's wonderful to see that they're prepared to put their presence at events like this. I want to thank in particular the Imam here, because without him, I suppose there's a young man called Rory Carroll, Irish passport holding journalist with the Guardian, was kidnapped in Iraq. And within hours of that happening, I got a phone call from the mosque here and was asked to come down. I had been here before in many of the different masses, and I joined him for prayer. And shortly after, before we ate, he informed me that he and many of his colleagues could help and assist with the release of that individual. And this was a remarkable example we couldn't speak about then of how the Islamic community in Ireland can be of practical assistance to fellow citizens here in Ireland. And within a matter of days, thanks to the work of the Imam, the journalist Rory was released, and I was able and happy, lucky position to ring his father, who had been a journalist colleague of mine, to tell him that no matter what else he heard from the government were deploying a kind of a team, and we're talking about deploying a team to Baghdad, it wasn't necessary. Thanks to the help of Muslims here in Ireland, we were able to secure that young man's release. He's alive today, still working as a journalist, I understand that I was in the happy position of being able to tell his father, thanks to the communications arranged by the man here. I was in that lucky position in my life to be able to tell that father of that young man that his son would be released within the next 24 hours. And it happened. So praise be to God, praise be to Allah, praise to be all the Muslims in Ireland who want to contribute, who want to be of help, who want to show the basic humanity and respect for life that this community has shown in that instant and in many, many other instances. So I salute this community. I'm very proud of my association with the Muslim community generally. And as I say, it's possibly better for all of you that I'm not seeking votes. I'm here to say thank you. And I would like to draw attention, I suppose, to page 122 of this book about the saint, if you like, that we commemorate here in the Islamic tradition. And the idea, very simply put, that his movement was what? Seeking justice and opposing oppression. This is something that brings all of us together. No matter what, whether you be of religious, Shia, Sunni, whether you be Christian, Catholic, it doesn't matter. This is an essential value that all faith-based organizations pursue and seek to enforce. And I use that type of word, enforce. There is an obligation on those who believe in these type of values to try to enforce them. And I'm not suggesting you act as an enforcer of religion or an enforcer, but you are, if you are of religious faith or belong to it, you have an obligation to try to influence. And I don't like the word enforcement, but influence, enforce, they are all the part of persuade. We must all use our skills to pursue the very noble cause of opposing oppression wherever it appears, and of course supporting justice. And it's not about getting rid of injustice. In fact, I love the way that's put positively in this book, that you must support justice, not necessarily oppose injustice. Of course, you must do one's own means, but the idea of being positive about seeking justice for people is a very important one, which I will take away from this today. Apologies about my lack of awareness or knowledge of Imam Hussain, but I know that he has done great work, like all of the great martyrs in Islam and the other world religions. So thank you so much again, Imam, for being. I'm sorry I have to go, but what I will do and promise, and I think Siraj knows I don't make rash promises, unusual. Somebody who'd been in politics, but anyway, I will come back in the next few weeks and hopefully sit down and pray with you, because to be honest with you, even though you did the last time I was here, you did this marvelous thing for that young journalist. Actually, eating and sitting down and praying was very helpful to me. Anytime I sat down with the community in the different mosques, it was always a restful and wonderful occasion. As you can imagine, politics is a very busy kind of occupation. And actually spending the time with the community, sitting, most importantly dining afterwards, was a wonderful experience for me. So I have very strong positive feelings about all of you. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. The doors are open for all of you, anytime, any place. It's a very accessible place. And this is the beauty of this mosque as opposed to other mosques, that the doors are open. We have a prayer schedule throughout the day. Friday is our main prayer time in the afternoon, and also Saturday gathering is the open invitation to the community. Anybody could walk in at time of the prayer in the evening. After that, we have lectures associated with the dates coinciding with the events of our calendar. So that is a very, very welcoming place, as a lot of people have experienced. There's a bit of food always, and there's always a food after this conference as well. So please don't go without taking that food takeaway. So, I mean, this is what it is, and I'm grateful to Conor Lenihan, that old friend of mine. His father was an old friend, so these kind of things do matter when you connect with the grassroots of the people who are the key figures in politics in this country, and a practicality when it happens. A situation like Rory Gallagher, who has been trapped, unfortunate circumstances, in a war zone area, that he was released by the assistance of our Imam, Dr. Ali Al-Saleh. Now may I request Adrian Christian from the Dublin City Court, the Interfaith Forum, a valuable organization, existing, a regular speaker at this conference. Many thanks, Adrian Christian. Thank you.
Thank you, Siraj.
Your Excellence. Is this better? So, Your Excellence, ladies and gentlemen, friends, Imam Ali. I'm not going to count how many times I've been here before you, because I can't remember. It's been a good few times anyway. But every time I come here, I am delighted, and I come with pleasure and with an open heart. And I come on behalf of Dublin City Interfaith Forum to bring a message of solidarity, friendship, and for that I want to thank first Siraj, Imam Ali, who's always been a very kind supporter of the forum, and worked with us. It's probably not a coincidence that in 2 days' time we're marking the UN International Day of Peace. And this year the theme is recovering better for an equitable and sustainable world. So it's fitting in a way to have the Imam Hussain conference at this time of the year, because it does dovetail with the theme that the UN have chosen for the International Day of Peace. So reflecting together on the relevance of Karbala, of the relevance of Imam Hussain and his peace efforts, I'd like to start with a short reflection from a different tradition, from the Hebrew scriptures. And it's called One Who Goes Through a City. What does he say when entering? May it be thy will, O Lord, my God, to bring me into this city in peace. When he is inside, he says, I give thanks to thee, O Lord, my God, that thou hast brought me into this city in peace. When he is about to leave, he says, may it be thy will, O Lord, my God, and God of my fathers, to bring me out of this city in peace. When he is outside, he says, I give thanks to thee, O Lord, my God, that you have brought me out of this city in peace, and as you have brought me out in peace, so may you guide me in peace and support me in peace and make me proceed in peace. So this year, as we heal from this COVID-19 pandemic, we are inspired to think creatively and collectively about how to help everyone recover better, how to build resilience, how to transform our world into one that is more equal, more just, equitable, inclusive, sustainable, and healthier. Our forum will mark this important event on Tuesday evening at the Mansion House. If you follow us on our social media platforms, you will see part of the service there. And you are more than welcome to join us, as usual. Coming back to our conference, I just want to reflect that Imam Hussain, through his example of selfless sacrifice, left us with a legacy that is relevant today, was relevant immediately after his sacrifice, and will forever be relevant. showed us the moral courage to come together as brothers and sisters and work together for peace. And that poses us with a great challenge, because we as faith communities, we have a huge role to play. And just as Imam Hussain over 1300 years ago, we are all committed to values of hospitality, justice, mercy, and peacemaking. Our leaders, our organizations have to strengthen efforts to improve religious knowledge and understanding. This will help to challenge people who act out of prejudice and misunderstanding and engage in destructive behavior. As faith communities, we have a vision to serve and to keep hope alive. We are committed to God and also to people. We are rooted in local neighborhoods as well as in worship and prayer, and have a strong desire to make life better for all. We work to address inequality, and we are well placed to relate to the most marginalized sections of our communities. And how does this resonate with Imam Hussein's struggle over 1300 years ago to, and I quote, eradicate corruption, undertake enjoining to do good, and restrain from evil? The Islamic system of education is structured to support life all around. This includes the study of ideal religion, ideal citizenship, an ideal social life, ideal characters, ideal values, and an aptitude to think and act for the benefit of the entire world. You noted that ideal everything, which is a struggle for perfection. Ethics and the importance of positive education are held in high regard in Islam. And this is why it's so vitally important in these times when fake news, extreme right or extreme left rhetoric seems to be raising again its ugly head. Our values form the foundation of our ethics and our moral concepts. We are not born into the world with ethical theories ingrained in us, but we are rather set up to the process of value recognition, value designing, and value creation, being of a reflective entity. In essence, values are the bedrock conception that we want, or what we want to avoid. Just like in my own tradition, our faith links us with God through prayer and teaches us to be active members in our community and in our society. We cannot function on our own, completely isolated from community and society. It is not enough just to say the prayers. We must be committed to God in our hearts and strive to walk a path of improvement. In our communities, we all need each other. We are given one another as a gift. The student needs the teacher, as the teacher needs the student. So in order to create peaceful communities, it is imperative that we must learn how to avoid stereotyping, prejudice, and assumptions. In my own scriptures, James says, doesn't this discrimination show the good judgments are guided by evil motives? And then, who says, and most of them follow only conjecture and suspicion, whereas conjecture and suspicion can be of no avail against the truth. Surely God is all-knowing of what they do. That's a surah from the Quran. As children and adults, we all make assumptions about the world around us. based on our life experience and on what we have learned. These assumptions can arise from our direct experience, but can also be shaped by what we've learned from other sources, which may include our own families, friends, movies, television, the internet. Since we all have different life experiences, we do respond differently in the same situations. It would be hard to go through a single day without relying on assumptions from past experience. In themselves, assumptions are neither good or bad, but sometimes they can lead us astray. Through our work with the Interfaith Forum, we create opportunities to overcome stereotyping and prejudice. We develop relationships and we get to know people as individuals, just as the speakers before me have mentioned. We've been working together for years, and may God help us to continue the work that we started. And it's easy. I feel so comfortable walking into this place all the time, to the point that I don't even think it's a place of friendship and hospitality, and I know the door is open, and who I find here is friendly, and that's enough for me. Like Darren said before, our forum offers the opportunity for our members to share their unique perceptions, and that space to be heard and not to be attacked or judged. Sometimes through sharing these perceptions in dialogue, we identify common ground. Other times, common ground may not be found, and that's okay too. But dialogue can still offer the opportunity for peaceful coexistence and the building of community through thoughtful, deep speaking and respectful listening. I suppose the most important foundation is the Interfaith Charter so far, I guess. And one of the principles states very clearly to encourage dialogue between people of different beliefs and faiths in all spheres of life, not just faith communities, all spheres of life, to eradicate misunderstanding, intolerance and exclusion, and extend openness and understanding between our different faith communities. So in the contemporary expression of interfaith cooperation, again, we at the Dublin City Interfaith Forum moved the idea towards a vision where local communities and organizations work together to counter and challenge hostility, a vision in which no doubt Imam Hussain was striving for a long time ago, to create cultures of welcome and hospitality and safety for all, but especially for most vulnerable of our residents. And again, we extend you an open invitation to come along, to work with us, join us in achieving these aims. Thank you.
The greatest achievement of this gem of the city is the Dublin City Interfaith Forum, which came into existence. And the second biggest achievement was the Interfaith Charter that we are signatory, and most of the places of worship and the mosques and all the religious places are and we had been proudly participated in that signatory ceremony in the Glencree Centre, which is the Peace and Reconciliation Centre in Wicklow. So this is the greatest development and the work that has been going on. The point about the UN Integration Day of Peace, International Day of Peace, is being talked about it in a global context, because what has happened globally reflects globally, and people get concerned. Up until yesterday, Afghanistan was not being talked about it for 20 years. It was being forgotten as a war zone. Now, all of a sudden, people are concerned. So everything has a perspective, and everything, the world is a very small place. Humanity interconnects the world. So therefore, this is a greatest concern about a global situation of peace, and it is our choices. If we do make choices to being on the straight and narrow path, as we 5 times the prayers we do, 17 times in our prayer times we say the surah from Quran, Surat al-Mustaqim, keep us on a straight path. Toughest thing in the world to do for humanity. Keeping yourself on a straight path, because you do go, as you mentioned, stray with your desire, with your other influences and things like that. So it is the most difficult thing, but people who are spiritually driven, have a faith community, they do keep on, or try to at least, to be on the straight and narrow path, not to create unnecessary desires which can lead to astray. Finally, I would like to request and thank you for your patience, Michael Corbett, the Superintendent Garda, attending this conference and gracing the occasion. Michael, Superintendent.
No, Mr. Chairperson, Siraj, Mr. Ambassador, Imali, fellow guests. It gives me great pleasure to be here today to speak to say a few words on behalf of An Garda Síochána at this conference. I thank you for the invitation and the very kind and welcoming that you've given to myself and my team. Sergeant Geraldine Green and Sergeant Dermot Delaney are here with me from the Garda National Diversity and Integration Unit. And for me personally, it's my first time coming here. I came up to Harker Square as the Superintendent of Community Engagement. I'm a Cork man originally, and I'm been exiled in Dublin for the last 18 months. So I replaced my predecessor, Superintendent Kevin Daly, who I'm sure some of you will have met and have known. So I replaced Kevin in the Garda National Diversity and Integration Unit and Community Engagement. And I suppose I'm delighted to be here today to speak, and I suppose to join in your celebrations in relation to this great leader, Imam Hussain. And I think one of the one of the signage that you've up that struck me as we came in and as we were standing outside was the one here behind me on my left. 1.5 billion people, I think, that really struck me when I read that 1.5 billion people know who Imam Hussain is. So I suppose I would like to pay tribute to all of our Irish Muslim community that we have here in Ireland. You play a very important part in Irish society. You contribute very much to all the various different areas of Irish life, including business, sport, healthcare, media, culture, and of course religious. And I suppose that enhances our society greatly, along with all the other traditions and communities and cultures that we have here in Ireland today. I suppose my role as Superintendent in charge of Community Engagement and the Garda National Diversity Unit, we are committed in An Garda Síochána to promoting equality, diversity and inclusion, both internally and externally. An Garda Síochána will continue to work hard to promote diversity, improve access, ensure inclusivity and provide support to all our minority and diverse communities. I suppose really what I want to say is that Ireland is becoming a very multicultural society. We have huge numbers of people who have declared themselves non-Irish, and we as a police force in An Garda Síochána want to be able to provide a policing service to everybody in our communities, regardless of what religion, where you come from, what part of the world you come from. And I suppose that is the message that I really want to get across today, that we are here to serve our community regardless of where you come from or who you are. The Garda National Diversity Forum was set up last year, which I'm a part of, and we have everybody across all the various different communities are represented on it. And Adrian, the previous speaker here, is an active member of that forum. And I suppose that forum is a very important forum from a diversity point of view, in that we are working together with all of the various different communities here in Ireland, working to try and make our policing service a better service for everybody. And I think that forum is working very well at the moment, and we're working in partnership, and we have great cooperation from all our partners on that forum. I think it's also important that I mention, earlier this year we made changes to our uniform policy in An Garda Síochána, relaxing the requirements and allowing for the wearing of turbans, beards and the hijab. This is a very welcome development, and it really modernises An Garda Síochána and brings us into the modern day sphere. We'd only be too delighted to see more people joining An Garda Síochána from diverse and minority communities, because at the end of the day, as a police force, we need and we require better representation across An Garda Síochána to be able to build confidence and trust in the communities in which we work and serve, and to be able to keep those communities safe. And I think there was a number of references made to peace and tranquility and living together amongst all our various different communities. And that's what we want to be able to provide, that service to all of our communities. I suppose discrimination and prejudice are commonplace across not alone our country but across the world. And we in Garda Síochána take this behaviour very seriously, and any complaints made to An Garda Síochána will be taken seriously and will be fully investigated. Earlier this year, back in July, on the 21st of July this year, we launched our online hate crime reporting facility. And again, I suppose this provides, it's another step along the road, and it provides a safe and secure way for people to report hate crime. If people are a victim of hate crime, they should feel confident and secure to be able to report it to An Garda Síochána. And this is just another mechanism that they can do so now online. And their complaints will be taken seriously and investigated. We also published hate crime leaflets in 19 different languages during the launch of our online hate crime. And these are available up on the Garda website and in Garda stations throughout the country. I would also like to mention that we have a network of 310 Garda diversity officers who are working throughout the country in districts and divisions all around the country, who are trained in relation to dealing with diversity issues within An Garda Síochána, and are only too delighted to help anybody who seeks their assistance. And another area, I suppose, that I would like to mention is our training. Currently, we have a very comprehensive training programme going out to all Garda personnel in relation to hate crime, diversity and cultural awareness. There's also training in leadership and diversity. This is all part of An Garda Síochána's strategic approach to policing a multicultural and ever-changing, vibrant Irish society. And I think that is the message today. It's the society that we are policing, and it has enriched Irish society. All the various different communities that come here to Ireland and that are part of our society have enriched it no end. So again, thank you very much, Siraj, for inviting us here today. I hope it's my first visit, and I hope it'll be the first of many. As long as I'm in Garda Síochána, I would be delighted to come back. And again, thank you for your warm welcome and your invitation, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So you left the Republic of Cork and the welcome to the Republic of Dublin. And we are the part of this republic. So many thanks. Introducing Diversity Unit, which is a very, very important unit, I must say that. Its grassroots goes back to the many, many years when Harcourt Square was being identified as a centre. The very first multicultural unit, which was launched when Bertie Ahern was the Taoiseach of this place, of this country, Store Street Garda Station, and I was honoured to launch that and was the grassroots level at that time. So we have come a long way, a journey. At that time, the department was very small, the fundings was not there, those issues were there. And thank God that those issues are gone, and now it has expanded, and rightly so, because of the response for the expansion of the communities, various communities. So I'm really grateful. And indeed, it's the integration of the organizations like Interfaith Forum, ourselves, other mosques, and at Touchwood we have a great collaboration with all the Muslim community. Unlike different cities of the globe, Dublin has got a good relationship with our colleagues across the road, up the road, I say, in Clonskeagh Mosque, in South Circular Road Mosque. The members, the key members, the management come here, they're friendly with us, and we are friendly with them. So there is no, as such, tension within the Muslim community as such, the new community. And the key for that is education. We tried our hard best to educate people that, look, what happens in the Middle East has no reflection here. You made your home in Ireland. So be proud of that, and be civil, and learn from each other's experience, and be welcomed here. Because the host community, the Irish community, is the most welcoming, most generous, and most, humane community, which is acknowledged by many people over the years. The various ambassadors who come over here experience living here, and I can only watch and speak from the experience of the Indian ambassador, whom I'm very friendly with, and I've been invited with various forums. Every time he traveled breadth and length of the 32 counties, well, not 32 counties, 26 counties, because 6 counties doesn't come under his restriction. One day they will. I'm very Republican from that point of view. So this is the work of Diversity Unit, which has got a long way to go, and I think Muslim community will be part of it in any way they can. The younger generation will certainly join, and I think one member of this community has already joined the reserve from Iraq, as far as I know. So there's a great opportunity for people to join and to be part and feel that this is your country. Finally, we are well within our time scale. May I like to request the host, Dr. Ali Al-Saleh, the Imam of the Al-Bayt Association, who is the creator of this place. We founded this place 25 years ago, and because of him. May I request Dr. Ali Al-Saleh to come forward to say a few words. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة والتسليم على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Although I'm not going to take long, I'm not here on to speak, only to give me the chance to thank you for coming, especially His Excellency the Ambassador of Islamic Republic of Iran, our brother, our friend from the integration unit, and our friend there also, for coming to it. This is a word to you as our guest, and a word to our society. As you know, Imam Hussain alayhi salam didn't uprise to make people praying like Muslim, didn't uprise to make people go to Mecca like Muslim. He uprised to make people stand for justice everywhere. So I think the message of Imam al-Hussein will serve us as we lived back home, and it will serve our children
as they grow up here as Irish Muslim. And as you know, our duty here always is to make this society more safe and to do our role and our part in serving this society. Although we are very grateful, you know, we arrived with obsession and with fear of racism and Islamophobia, and you have heard many people talk about this. I can tell you, we are very happy in Ireland. We haven't seen a lot of these things, and we have discovered that Irish people are so civilized. You know, I am as a Muslim clergy. Before I arrived to Ireland, I have heard that Irish people are very religious and Catholic people. So, but when we arrived, we found them giving us our freedom, respecting us. For example, for last 25 years, we found every help from our neighbors and every help from the Garda. That's why we have done our role, as the Minister Connor has said, but also the Garda here knew that our center is on their list as a shelter in the case of disasters, or also on the list for a needed more center for corona, for sheltering some patient or for giving vaccination. And this is the real message of Imam Hussain. We will be close to Imam Hussain more as we serve our community and our society more. We might come here as Iraqi or as a Pakistani or an Indian, but our children are mainly 100% are Irish. They support rugby and they like fish and chips, and they don't eat spicy food. But although they brought falafel with them, their parents falafel and shawarma, now Irish food. So I would like to thank you, and good chance. I would like to thank Siraj for organizing this meeting, making our center open to our neighbor and our society and our lovely country. Thank you for coming, and inshallah we will meet again and again in this lovely country, doing our job at any time. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon all.
Many thanks, Dr. Ali, for welcoming everybody and indeed hosting everybody this afternoon. Again, I suppose the people are reluctant to participate in live, in person, these events, because we are just coming to endemic from this pandemic. So I like the word endemic, which was again used by one of the great journalists on the media. Again, as I said, what the speakers have said have relevance to ourselves, to our community, to our people, and be the ambassador yourself, because you're the one who spread the word for Imam Hussein's tradition that we come from, the small Shia community, but Muslim community as a large, we are all one community, in fact, whether we are Christian, Muslims, or coming from a different set of mind. Faith, unity, all of these words are the key words for that. I suppose Imam Hussein's journey, if you apply globally, has proven to those governments who have practiced his principles in fighting, injustice, oppression, and came out victoriously. In fact, in recent time, in our lifetimes, the principles of Imam Hussain has been implemented in certain areas of battlefields, and the people were being successful. So therefore, on a narrow point of view, on a personal level, yes, it is very important, but on a large scale, and that's where it is, that you are a cosmic, a unit, a microcosm unit, or at a large global part of the global story of Muslims in the world. And our duty is to serve. That is the bottom line. If you serve, one of the speakers have said that, Imam Hussain taught us to serve humanity. Serve it any way you can. It doesn't have to be with finance, it doesn't have to be, with time and all that. So these are the thoughts on the occasion of the annual commemoration that we do every year at this time. Focus for the larger Shia community is that to go to Karbala, go to Iraq, and to visit that. I had a good fortune to visit twice at a conference in a university in Kufa, which is a city in Iraq, and I wanted to take the Dermot Dunn from the Christchurch as a guest with me. But unfortunately, at the last minute, the Foreign Office have said that we don't have any diplomatic presentation there or representation, so we would not be advising him to travel, the safety of that. And that is the concern, that we don't have a diplomatic relationship with that. But in future, maybe welcoming all that, because that is a very welcoming country. It's a warm people when you go there and you meet there. Unfortunately, the global situation has made a different image of the people who are the followers of Ahlul Bayt, the followers of Imam Hussein's there. And it is the land of Imam Hussein, actually. When you go there, you do feel the peace there, the pilgrimage, the people who go there really get the benefit of that journey. So we try to do this kind of small activity in a very small way in this country, but everybody who participates, everybody who gives time, get the benefit and reward for it. So really a thank to everybody who came and spent the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. Lovely weather actually still we're having. So enjoy yourself, a little bit of food on the way out, and make sure that you do pick up a food, take away, or and have a cup of tea if you haven't. Many thanks for coming along, especially to our guest from the Garda Síochána, and of course Adrian as well, Ambassador, all of you. Thank you very much indeed for coming along.